Daily Words of God. The 6,000-year management plan is divided into 3 stages of work. No one stage alone can represent the work of the 3 ages, but only one part of a whole. The name Jehovah cannot represent the whole of God's disposition. The fact that he carried out his work in the age of law does not prove that God can only be God under the law. Jehovah set forth laws for man and handed down commandments to him, asking man to build the temple and the altars. The work he did represents only the age of law. This work that he did does not prove that God is only a God who asks man to keep the law, or that he is the God in the temple, or that he is the God before the altar. To say this would be untrue. The work done under the law can only represent one age. Therefore, if God only did the work in the age of law, then man would confine God within the following definition, saying, God is the God in the temple, and in order to serve God, we must put on priestly robes and enter the temple. If the work in the age of grace had never been carried out, and the age of law had continued until the present, man would not know that God is also merciful and loving. If the work in the age of law had not been done, and instead only the work in the age of grace, then all man would know is that God can only redeem man and forgive man's sins. Man would know only that he is holy and innocent, and that for man's sake he is able to sacrifice himself and be crucified. Man would know only these things, but have no understanding of anything else. Each age, therefore, represents one part of God's disposition. As for which aspects of God's disposition are represented in the age of law, which in the age of grace, and which in this present stage, only when all 3 stages have been integrated into one whole can they reveal the entirety of God's disposition. Only when man has come to know all 3 stages can he understand it fully. None of the 3 stages can be omitted. You will only see the disposition of God in its entirety after coming to know these 3 stages of work. The fact that God completed his work in the age of law does not prove that he is only the God under the law. And the fact that he completed his work of redemption does not mean that God will forever redeem mankind. These are all conclusions drawn by man. The age of grace having come to an end, you cannot then say that God belongs only to the cross, and that the cross alone represents the salvation of God. To do so would be to define God. In the present stage, God is mainly doing the work of the Word. But you cannot say then that God has never been merciful to man, and that all he has brought is chastisement and judgment. The work in the last days lays bare the work of Jehovah and Jesus, and all mysteries not understood by man, so as to reveal the destination and the end of mankind, and end all the work of salvation among mankind. This stage of work in the last days brings everything to a close. All mysteries not understood by man need to be unraveled to allow man to plumb them to their depths and have a completely clear understanding in his heart. Only then can the human race be classed according to kind. Only after the 6,000-year management plan is completed will man come to understand the disposition of God in its entirety. For his management will then have come to an end.